Hello, I'm Sally Buffington. I've written a memoir called A Place Like This, Finding Myself in a Cape Cod Cottage. And I'm excited to be at the San Diego Writers Festival and sign copies. And I hope you read my book. And good luck to the festival.
Start there. You want to start talking about your book?
Yes, okay.
Wonderful.
Well, I could say that I think it's a little different from a lot that's being offered at this festival, that I'm maybe one of a smallish group of people writing about a place, the sense of place. It isn't just the title and this whole idea of how place influences you.
Yeah.
And I'm bi-coastal. I used to live in the East Coast, migrated to the West Coast, and bounced back and forth. And I think that has had a major effect on my life. And I also wanted to suggest that all of us have, you can call it a place like this or a place of the heart,
Mm.
but there are places in your life that you go back to. It can be, I've learned from talking to people all over the country, it may be a house, as mine was. It might be the natural world. It might be someplace you went on a trip, but that is in your heart for a number of reasons. In my
Mm.
case, particularly because I had to learn so much about myself there. It has almost a sense of achievement about it because I made it my place, but it didn't start that way.
Well, I think that idea is true for all of us, whether we realize it or not. The
Mm-hmm.
places we visit, the places we inhabit, have the ability to be transcendent for us. And if we stop, slow down, listen, and really feel that place, we get a sense of all that it brings. And in the opening of your book, it talks about the impending storm that's
Yes,
about to hit. And,
yes,
a place like this, we think about, okay, this book is going to be about a place, and we think maybe a place inside the person, as well as a literal place. And this storm is about to touch down. Can you talk a little bit about that storm at that time and maybe what storm means in the book as far as metaphor goes?
well, thank you. It interestingly, I let's say I used the storm. There are not that many storms all through the book, perhaps, but it is something you live with the reality of back east and on Cape Cod. This was, I must say, to be clear, this was not the horrific experience they've been through in Florida. It was comparatively manageable, let's say. Nonetheless, you prepare for these things and you sort of measure yourself against them.
Right.
And it was
Right.
for me, it was a particularly good point to begin on. How did I manage versus how my mother-in-law had managed? Two very different women in charge of the place at one time or another. How did we handle it? And since my relationship with her is one of the central things in the book, I thought it functioned for me to introduce that well.
Is the relationship you speak of a rather stormy relationship, or is
It
there
had
some
its
more
it had
harmony?
its moments. It was it was both difficult and frankly a tremendous. I might say she gave me a second bringing up. She may not have realized she was, but she did. My mother-in-law was this bright, smart woman, extremely interesting. I liked her. I also found her very difficult. And then holding on to this house, as people do, when you're very elderly and you're getting tired, but
Mm.
you can't admit it, makes it hard for the people around you.
Yeah.
So some of the later chapters, I was on my own and to some degree liberated, yet always thinking of her. She was still present in the house.
Interesting that, I've experienced that as well, where even after the people leave, if you have a chance to stay in the house or the place or revisit, there is that sense of this, maybe even a haunting feeling that
Oh, it is.
the people,
It
the
is that I
lives
was,
inhabited are still
in
there.
the same, sitting in the same chair, doing,
Yeah.
cooking in the same kitchen, making the same beds, whatever you want to. I was
Yeah.
literally in her footsteps to a great degree. Yet
Yeah.
she also provoked me to do a lot of thinking. And
It sounds like it. And I'm already fascinated. I feel like I could talk to you about this all day, just this idea of the
thank
sense of
you.
place and,
Thank
it's in
you.
the walls.
Well, I also wanted to avoid that, the cliche of cartoons and everything. Oh, I can't get along with my mother-in-law. It
Mm,
wasn't that. She was a challenge. And I learned so much in the process and learned about myself.
yeah. Well, probably as with most relationships, they're always more complicated than on the surface.
Very much so. And it was territory, that we
Yeah.
didn't know each other too well. And bingo, there I was in her territory, or she visited me here. All of a sudden, for 10 days, she was on my territory. And
Hmm.
it's a hard way to get to know somebody.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so what sparked the idea for writing this story?
Well, just that I mean, for one thing, the whole thing was fascinating as I was living it. It started actually the first piece I wrote many essays before I ever thought of a book in a freestanding way, was about relating us, my mother-in-law and me, to the Mary and Martha story in the Bible.
Hmm.
Mary being the one who's the more spiritual and connected to the world and her thoughts. Martha's the one who's keeping the home fires going. And there's something of both of us in both figures. So I started with that, and then I began to think, wow, this is an amazing place. The more I kept going, the longer I stayed, the more pieces of the thing came together. But then there was the struggle to write a coherent book.
Mhm. I think
You
those
can
of us
write
who
all
write
you
a book,
want, but
it's always a struggle, right? To write a
oh, it
coherent
is.
book.
It is.
Yeah, it's a
And
huge
a lot is
undertaking.
left on the cutting room floor too.
Yes, yes. And hopefully, if you've left a lot on the cutting room floor, you're able to piece some of it together and submit those as stories, or maybe they'll be the makings of another book.
Oh, I've already used some of it. Yes,
Okay,
some of it
great.
has found its way into my blog, and some is waiting to see where it will find its way.
Yeah, wonderful. So let's see here. I want to go back to the Writers Festival for a moment, talk
Yeah.
about that, and then kind of close out talking a little bit more about reading and your book. And
Mhm.
um, so, why did you decide to sponsor the Writers Festival?
Well, I mean, I would say giving back. That I have been helped by a number of the people who are running this festival. I've worked, of course, with Marnie, with Jennifer, with Tricia, who also has worked as a publicist for me. And they go way beyond any fees you pay. And I also see what they're doing for this community. And I am just so happy to help it along.
Hmm.
I think also writing's it's a pretty solitary business. It is not easy to find community. So I would like to help it come along.
That's wonderful. And, I find that ironic, but it's true that writing is so solitary and there are millions of us. However, it's a
Yeah,
very isolating endeavor.
it is. It is. And fortunately, I like being alone. You can only have so much,
Right.
you need to meet other people. I've gone to writers' workshops out of state, and that was a great source, but it's not continuous, I have to say. It's brief.
Yeah. Well, will you be attending the festival just as a festival goer, or do you have another role there that you're looking forward to?
I'm going to do a bit of both. I will be there at noon to do a signing. I don't know which location, but as I'm sponsoring the keynote speaker, I'm also doing a signing after her presentation. And I want
Wonderful.
to get around and say hello to people. So I will
Wonderful.
be there, though sadly not the whole day.
Okay. Well, it's a long day. It's a lot of
It is.
literariness.
It
So,
is, isn't it? But that's wonderful. That really
yes,
is.
I think the programming is wonderful, and we're trying to include everybody, and looking forward to it, and think that festival goers are going to be very pleased with the content and all that there will be to take part in.
And I think also, this pandemic, of course, isn't finished with us, but we're comparatively finished. And I've noticed from other events I've gone to, we're all so glad to get out. We need this.
That's very true. Very true. So it's about time, isn't it?
Sure is. Yes.
Okay, so do you have your book
I
available?
have it right here.
Can
Yes.
you hold it up, remind us of the title, and maybe read the first few lines?
Since I already spoke about the storm, which is the first few lines, I'd like to just read a couple of the last few lines.
Wonderful.
I felt this every summer I left the cottage. How can I leave? How can I leave this windy center of earth? Leave behind what is offered here. This scene, this place I've stepped into where I feel and notice and breathe and think and write. Everything is full of mystery and holiness. And I had been given this place to perceive, to write into being mine. All of it, part of this family cottage and its land that I had never known before I met Andy. Craigville took me in and molded me. And within it, I built my own Cape Cod house.
Sally, it's beautiful. And your voice, as you read it, I feel the authenticity of it, the calm wisdom of it. And wow, a lot of times we think, well, don't read the end of the book or don't tell us the end of the book because we want to experience it on our own. However, you doing that, I think, pulls us right in. And now we need to find out, how did we get to this transcendent ending?
That's my hope.
Yeah, speaking of transcendence, what a beautiful ending.
Well, thank you very much. And there's more to it, so I can say, please read it.
Yes, I look forward
Definitely.
to it. Absolutely. What do you hope readers will learn from the experience of reading your book?
I think to value a place, to maybe think back on their own lives where those places are, and what did it do for you? What did you learn, or what process did you go through? And I fully think it can be sometimes a hard go as well as a very rewarding one. For me, it was that I spent much of my early life on Cape Cod. And this was a very different view of Cape Cod from what I was used to. I was used to the solitary life in nature as the ideal thing. And suddenly I was in a family compound of a strong family. I had to make my way in. So, it's life. It's the experience of life. And so I'd say, read mine and see if you can find commonalities with yours. And I hope many people do.
Yeah. Do you recommend that people visit old haunts and try to spend some time there to see what comes of it for them?
I know people do that. It's dicey. I mean, in my case, the house has been sold and is being rebuilt into a mansion. So it's not the same. I think revisiting in mind, or the people who have a great natural place, are perhaps the most fortunate that they remember.
It's heartbreaking, isn't it? Or it can be when you revisit a place and it's changed so much.
I think the worst is, it was true for my father. The family homestead had been plowed under. It is now under the 210 freeway in Pasadena.
Wow.
Yet it was always remembered. I heard stories about that house. So I think we hold on in our memory and our hearts to these places.
Absolutely. I wonder too if sometimes to spend time thinking about it is one thing, to revisit it is another, but to hold it in your heart, to think about it as you remembered it, to find the good that was there, that nostalgia or that sense of saudade, that you could never have this back and you have this longing forever. There's something beautiful and haunting in that we maybe can't control, and we shouldn't try to.
No, yet it can be a comfort.
Yeah.
revisit in mind. It's an inner refuge, if you want to call it that.
Yeah.
I think that's why books like Walden have survived, because part of us, many of us, want to have such a place.
Yeah.
And, Thoreau made such an indelible impression with that book.
Yeah, I mean, and for those of us who are writers and spending so much time alone, to think about what he has written about, spending so much time in nature to really find himself and to feel at peace with just existing.
That's
so many
right.
people
Yes.
struggle with this, and maybe people are looking too much for what's outside of them instead of looking to that solitude to find what is in them that's a value that they can really hold on to and find worth in.
Yes, we're very lucky if we can do that.
Yes.
But I think you can cultivate it. And I've been influenced by other people's books about great places. And I'm sure that's why some of the novels that you read in childhood, Anne of Green Gables, well, people always remember the house, Green Gables,
Right.
Little Women, the house and their circumstances were a character for us.
And The Fall of the House of Usher.
Yes. Oh, absolutely.
Sometimes terrifying.
I've never forgotten reading that for the first time.
Right.
Yeah, that's indelible. And the great novel Rebecca, the way she remembers that estate where it takes place, and the reader remembers it with her.
So you mentioned that you have maybe some ideas for how people can cultivate this sense of place, or even this appreciation for being alone as a writer.
Well, for me, it's been photographing. I photograph a great deal, and I'd like to, if I may, put in a plug. Go to my website, sallybuffington.com, because a lot of my photographs are there. But the photographing, I'm also someone who walks a lot, and I like to be alone, prowl around. If there's woods to be found, I will find them.
Oh, lovely.
Or beaches or marshes, and also I always have my nose in a book. I'm not very successful with TV. I'd rather read.
I love to read, but sometimes I feel like maybe it's takes more out of me than watching TV, and TV is just that mindless.
That's true. You're right. It definitely, if you were reading something that you deeply enter into.
Yeah.
No, I'm with you there. Although I had an uncle who had 3 books going as a regular thing, and it was like the courses of his dinner.
Yeah.
And I have what I call dessert reading. So sometimes you need dessert reading too.
Wonderful. Well, you mentioned getting lost in the woods, so to speak. I too love that. And books, in a sense, are like the woods, right? It's something that you can get lost in and really cherish or feel the beauty and maybe the magnanimity of all of this that has been created.
Absolutely. Very much so.
Yeah, I love those parallels that you just reminded me of. So do you refer to photographs in your book?
I do. There are some in there, and I'd like to say that what's in the book is in black and white and very, to me, disappointing. If you go to my website, go to the tab for the book section, and all of those are in color.
Okay.
So you can see the places I'm talking about.
Wonderful.
And
that's something that memoirists can do, is include pictures in their books if they wish, and many of them choose to help the reader really
that's right. Well, I'm also interested, and I'm thinking of doing another memoir on writing about the role of photography in my life. And you'll see there's quite a bit to do with it in this memoir. So you may see it. I won't say one of these years. I don't know how soon.
Well, that sounds fascinating and wonderful. I think, a lot of times people don't know how to get in touch with memories, and looking at old photographs is a great way to do it.
Yes.
And do you have any other advice for writers trying to tap into those memories and a sense of place?
I think it's single photographs, things like snapshots, are extraordinary.
Yeah.
If you think, let's call it around it, what happened before, after, who's in it, who's not in it, why. You'll find memory makes more memory. You'll find yourself almost going in as if it were stepping into a scene in a play.
Yes, yes.
And it takes some mental working, but you can cultivate it and you can do that.
Have you ever struggled with the idea, or has it ever hit you when you've been writing, that often memories, as we think we remember them, are not accurate, right? We remember the last time we remembered it, and so on, like a chain down the line. So the farther we get away from that actually lived moment, maybe it's changed more than we even realize.
That could be. There's also what I would call the emotional truth of something.
Yes. Thank you for mentioning that.
That it may not be the fact, but it has something that is true to you, important to you. And I think that is valid as long as you recognize it may not be perfectly factual.
Right.
Because time gets in our way. Sometimes you conflate things chronologically.
Right.
But there's so much to draw upon there.
Yes. And memoirists, I think that's the memoirist's job, among other things, to bring this emotional truth and the essence of the experience to the reader.
Absolutely.
And often readers don't understand this. They'll say, how can you remember exactly what happened? You were 4 years old, or it was so long ago. I don't remember what I ate for breakfast yesterday. How can you remember? But the more you do it, the more, like you said, it pulls it out of you.
It does. It really does. And you also, I'm sure you have the same thought that if you lived closely with people, no, the tape recorder wouldn't deliver the conversation totally, but you lived, you know how they talk, or you remember a certain scene, what was being discussed. I would say your ability to recall and pull it together is absolutely valid.
Yes, I agree with that. Thank you. This has been fun and enlightening. I definitely think that this is going to point readers in the direction of your book. I know more so than before meeting you and talking about this, I'm very intrigued by your book and looking forward to it.
Thank you, Leslie.
Do you have any final words you'd like to share before we close out?
Oh, thank you. Never give up. No, I think it's true. And also, I think I'm thankful. My first career was as a musician. The example of practicing, keeping at something, and performing, I have found it extremely valuable, and I'm thankful for that. But that I'm used to, and I just say to people, I don't need to go to a coffee house, sit down, put the pencil on the legal pad and write it down. Keep at it. I don't know what it is about legal pads, but boy, they're wonderful.
Well, I think some people have their tried and true, whatever that is. If it's a spiral bound notebook, or, some people do their first draft on the computer, and I've kind of gone that way. I never used to, because my voice, my writing voice and style was so different on the computer compared to writing it longhand.
That's interesting. And maybe that's why I like the legal pads. I often go find a good chair, sit down, and just scribble for quite a while, and then later transcribe.
Yes. Yeah.
But I think it's mainly don't give up. What you have to say is the important thing.
I love that.
There's a great deal of detail to putting this all on. I'm very appreciative of that.
There are so many people who are doing so much work for this wonderful free event, and I'm so thrilled to be a part of it as well, and to be meeting other authors and having the chance to speak with you. It's just been wonderful, and I don't know, I wasn't counting, but I might have gotten chills throughout my whole body, maybe 5, 6, 7 times while talking to you.
Well, Leslie, thank you so much.
So you're resonating with me.
I appreciate it. And lovely to meet you, and I will look forward to seeing you Saturday.
I love it. I love to see people succeed, and I hear just the sincerity in your voice and the wisdom there in this book that my to be read pile is shelves long, but I keep collecting these beautiful books that I want to get to, and yours is on that list. So
thank you, Leslie. I appreciate this, Leslie.
You're welcome, and thank you. We appreciate you very much.
Thank you. Well, lovely talking to you.
Have a great day.